Welcome, and thank you for joining this update. Today's an exciting day for the Kubeflow community as we're going to go through the update of all the features in Kubeflow 1.4 as presented by the working groups. I'm Josh Bottom. I work as a Kubeflow community product manager, and this is October in 2021. So one of the things that I really like to focus on as a product manager is somewhat talking about the community and the structure. And as you can see here, the community structure in this release was really improved because we introduced a release team to work with the users, the working groups, and the distributions. And we're often asked, what is the purpose of a release? And so a release is really designed to improve Kubeflow user productivity through the introduction of new functionality that simplifies operations and streamlines ML workflows. I was speaking with a user yesterday, and what he told me why he liked having Kubeflow releases is that it provides a line in the sand. It gives them a place to know where you are, and it has tested compatibility and functionality. And it's helpful for these Kubeflow platform teams as a place where they can start their integration, testing, and documentation, and simplifies their introduction of new features to their operation and user teams. So I find that is important to give this mission statement or this direction of why we do releases. And the other part is that we do give a lot of contact points for folks to engage with the community. So we have working group and community meetings. We have the GitHub tracking. We have Slack questions that are answered, as well as email questions. And in 1.4, you also saw many process improvements, including the introduction and the use of a release handbook. There was a release team members that were voted on, approved. There was a schedule that was defined. Again, we used the Kanban board. And what I really liked was early in the cycle, we had the working group alignment where the KFServing and KF Pipelines presented their roadmaps, as well as the training notebooks, Katib, and the manifest, all provided a detailed presentation, which is recorded on those links, and you can see them. We updated the Kubeflow roadmap, as well as we went and made serious efforts to talk to the users, both from the user survey. We did mini summits with KFServing and with the AutoML and training operator working groups. We developed a schedule, which I think really did help us focus on improving quality. We had a development schedule. We had feature freeze, which included testing by the working groups. Then we had distribution testing. And we also came out and have a release schedule. And all of this was tracked through a GitHub issue, as well as in Kanban. And the themes and the features in 1.4, really simplifying operations, improving software foundation quality and usability, the ability to reduce redundant code. And this, I think you'll hear more about the universal training operator, which also we did extended common code for the web apps. And you'll see that there was more faster and better builds with more CI/CD in many of Katib training and notebooks, and the doc sprint we'll talk a bit about, and then flexible installation for the distributions and the DEX users using overlays. I think this is a really nice function, as well as looking at the streamlined workflows, increased use of metadata for pipeline orchestration and model monitoring, the maturation of the V2 and the V2 protocols. So both KFServing and KF Pipelines continue to improve and add additional functionalities and enhancements. And that's where we see these V2 protocols coming in. The KFServing UI, which provides details, logs, YAML, and metrics, and then the hyperparameter tuning options with Optuna and quasi-random, which you'll hear more about. One of the things that the survey had told us was that documentation was a place that we needed to concentrate, but also installation and tutorials. And I think that, as you've seen in the last few releases, we spent a lot of time in trying to work on those. And in 1.4, we did have a doc sprint, which I do believe when we started this in early September, and actually kicked off and ran the first phase of the doc sprint, we didn't think we'd get as much support as we did. We actually got 20 pull requests, and we discussed those, and many of the users started to step up and provide comments. The contributors have done a great job. I think last count, Shannon told me there might be as many as 47 doc PRs. So, I mean, when you think about it, and the feedback that we've gotten from the users, and the fact that we are starting to ramp that up with more resources, I think is great. Having this process to have a tracking issue and a Kanban board to watch these docs PRs, I think is good. And then we gave away a lot of t-shirts, and we still would like to give away more t-shirts. And we really do want users to participate in reviewing the docs and giving us good edits and good commentary on how we can improve them. From a working group standpoint, what I wanted to do is just provide a place where people could find all the tracking issues, the roadmaps, the change logs, and know the top dependencies, right? So you have links here. The top dependencies for testing in 1.4 were on Kubernetes, the 1.19, Istio 1.9.6, Knative 0.22.1, and Customized 3.2.1. So hopefully that's a good introduction into what and how we kind of got to 1.4. Now we're going to go into the details, and I'm very excited to introduce the working group leads for KF pipelines, and we'll start to go through their slides now.
Thank you, Josh. Hello, everyone. This is James Liu from Kubeflow Pipelines. I would like to give an update about Kubeflow Pipelines in the Kubeflow 1.4 release. Kubernetes has been replacing the Docker with a containerd runtime in the newer release. And in the Kubeflow 1.4 release, you are able to use Kubeflow Pipeline 1.7, which allows you to run non-Docker Kubernetes container runtime using emissary executor. You can take a look at the link here to learn more about emissary executor. This is a new Argo workflow executor, which is available for you to choose, no matter it's in Docker runtime or non-Docker runtime. As the Kubernetes is deprecating Docker as a container runtime after 1.20, emissary will become the default workflow executor of Kubeflow pipeline. So we encourage you to start using the new executor. Another improvement we have made is the Kubeflow pipeline v2 compatible mode. While the team is working towards Kubeflow pipeline v2, we are introducing a v2 compatible mode, so it allows you to easily migrate over to v2 eventually. Two of the highlights in the recent release is we have introduced the caching feature in the v2 compatible mode, and you can invalidate the cache in this v2 compatible mode by deleting the original pipeline one. Another one is the matrix visualization. In here, while using the v2 compatible mode, you can specify the output artifact type as the matrix or classification matrix or HTML markdown, which simplified the usage for exporting your information, your matrix, to MLMD. The last one is we start to allow in-cluster access using the service account token. So you can specify the service account token and then allows calling the in-cluster Kubeflow pipelines from notebook. With that, you can learn more from the changelog and the Git repo from above. And I'm going to hand it over to Josh to talk more about KFServing.
Hello. So instead of Josh, I am Paul Van Eck with the KFServing Working Group, and I will give a brief update on KFServing in the Kubeflow 1.4 release. But before we do that, since we are on the topic of pipelines, I'd like to allow some updates on the Kubeflow pipelines on Tekton project. So Tommy, if you want to do that real quick.
Hey, thanks, Paul. So my name is Tommy. I work on the Kubeflow pipeline on the Tekton projects. And I would just briefly go over what this project does. So the KP Tekton project brings the Kubeflow pipelines and Tekton together. The main purpose main purpose of this project is to leverage Kubeflow pipeline core components and to run the actual pipeline workloads using the Tekton pipeline project behind the scenes. And recently we have the 1.0 release for the KP Tekton projects, so check it out. And this release will be also part of the Kubeflow 1.4 release if you choose to deploy with Tekton. And in this release, we are going to have Tekton 0.27 support. And this version of the KP Tekton is based on the KP core release of 1.7 and the SDK release of KP 1.7.2. And below are some more specific updates for the Tekton side, such as supporting pipeline rules and custom tasks for the timeout features. And we're able to have multiple steps for passing parameter if, let's say, your Tekton results are way too big. And recently we added more supports on parallelism on pipeline rules, so you actually could now specify more parallelism parameter inside the parallel loop feature in a KFP. And then there's more optimization, such as have more inline task spec support for pipeline route and custom tasks. So the YAML for Tekton is more condensed now. And we have additional run API to run recursion pipeline loops. So you could actually have a much better experience when you try to run while loops in KFP. And the next thing we have is adding the Tekton graceful termination API that's introduced recently. We'll bring that into KP Tekton as well. So you can actually terminate the pipeline while letting the exec task to continue to run if you choose to. And then there's additional enhancement on any sequential custom tasks and some of the unit tests when it runs on different rare types of pipelines. And that's all the updates on the KP Tekton's project. So I will pass to Paul to talk about more update on KFServing.
All right, so KFServing. And as you probably know, KFServing is a project which enables machine learning model deployment on Kubernetes. More notably, it provides serverless inferencing on Kubernetes for your machine learning models, which could be a variety of frameworks such as TensorFlow, XGBoost, PyTorch, and so on. So the Kubeflow 1.4 release will include KFServing v0.6.1, and this is updated from the v0.5.1 release, which is included in Kubeflow 1.3. So some notable updates include the addition of the KFServing models web app. With this web app, users can view and manage deployed inference services straight from the Kubeflow dashboard. And this can even enable viewing logs and metrics in the UI as well. So it's a pretty nifty feature. The TorchServe image that KFServing uses was also updated. So now TorchServe has been upgraded to 0.4.0. Which has increased model support for models such as the swath of transformer models. Parallel inference support was also added. The key feature here is that the RayServe Python serve handle APIs can be used to scale up the model inference requests and offload the heavy computation to RayServe. There's also some increased multi-model serving framework support for those familiar with the trained model CRD that KFServing provides. And also KFServing now can support Knative versions greater than 0.19. So previous versions of Knative were configured by default to use cluster local gateway, but that was removed in favor of the service Knative local gateway. So KFServing was updated to account for that change. Yeah, so here are some additional updates. A feast transformer was added to the KFServing docs. For those who are not familiar, feature stores are critical pieces of machine learning infrastructure where you can store curated features. So Feast is an open source feature store that is pretty prevalent in the community. And so the idea with the KFServing example is that you gather online features from some user-provided Feast online serving endpoint, then pass that to the predictor for inference. And this is all done in a transformer pre-processing step. So you can definitely check out that example if you want to learn more. Next, Paddle support was added. So Paddle is another popular deep learning framework, especially in China. So now users can deploy and serve Paddle models in KFServing. Also, the storage init container in KFServing now uses Bato 3 instead of min.io. This enables the use of IAM roles for service accounts for AWS users. And finally, we have improved PMML server predict performance. So for those people serving PMML models, should now see a noticeable decrease in inference response time. And so that about covers it for KFServing. Thank you. And now let's get some Katib updates.
It's Andre from AutoML and Training Working Group. So from the Katib side, we have made the official 0.12 release. You can check the release notes by using the link in these slides. This is a very huge release for us. First of all, we made an improvements with the suggestion part, and we made integration with Optuna framework, which is provide a lot of additional hyperparameter tuning algorithms. And even more, we support multivariate tree-partition estimators algorithm, which is very efficiently produce better results than just a normal TPE. In the meantime, we're also upgrading the existing suggestions, specifically for Optuna. We supporting the quasi-random sequence, Sobol. You can always read more details by using the links in these slides. And also we supporting the new restart strategies for CMIS algorithms, such as IPOP and BIPOP. I strongly recommend to just follow the links in the slides and just read the papers about these algorithms. They are very efficient for hyperparameter tuning. Also, which is very exciting, we made integration with Argo workflows. And we have a couple of examples in our repo, which we can use. And right now, you can even use Argo workflows to tune your AutoML experience, which is kind of unique. And I strongly recommend you to check these examples in these slides. In the meantime, we continue making integration with Kubeflow training operators, and we make out of the box support for XGBoost job and other operators as well. In the meantime, we improving the installation part specifically for OpenShift, and we made improvements with child container resources where you can easily just remove them if your cluster does not support it. Also, I just want to remind you that if you want to join our regular meetings, please feel free to check these meeting notes in this slide. We meet every 2 weeks on Wednesdays. With that, I'm going to pass to Justin, who just give an update about training operators.
Hi, hello, this is Jiaxin. I'm from Training Work Group. Starting from 1.4, training operator unifies all the training operators into one to support all training frameworks. We renamed the TensorFlow operator to training operator and plan to move rest of the repos into maintenance mode. In this release, we mainly concentrate on this goal. A lot of code refactoring and API refactoring has been done to give user a consistent experience. And now all framework controllers will use the same core reconciling logics, run policy, so they have same job status definitions. So that makes the easier for user to integrate training operators into their system. From the maintenance point of view, it's also very easy to apply new features. For example, in this release, we add Prometheus counters, Python SDK, and the API documentation generations for all frameworks. And all the frameworks use the same standards now. Next slide. A common package contains the library to power the training operator. So the core reconciling logics is implemented here. In this release, we support multiple pods for training roles. So you can open extra pods for profiling and advanced monitoring. And several optimization has been done to improve the reliability, like the drop level TTL and the core expectation package for the reconciling. MPI operator is still developing separately. We all agree to merge it to training operator in next release. In current release, a new beta API has been added, which further reduced the pressure on the API server side. It replaced the SSH, it used the SSH to replace the kubectl execute and reduce the traffic to the API server. And also reuse the native Kubernetes APIs to get rid of some customized objects. Intel MPI has been supported as well. That's all the update for the training group. We'll move forward to the notebook working group.
Thanks, Jiaxin. So let's start for the notebooks working group with the web apps and the central dashboard. Specifically for this release, we had a more conservative approach, and we mostly aimed on further fixing some of our issues and introducing some new small functionalities. So regarding the central dashboard, we first of all have extended it to expose the new models UI from KFServing. And another really cool feature was the support for the dashboard to work with applications that are unaware of namespaces. So if someone would like to launch their application in a specific namespace, the dashboard can now dynamically know on which service to pass the traffic. So even if the users can deploy their apps into specific namespaces, and the dashboard can route the traffic depending on what namespace the user is seeing. As part of our CI/CD improvements, we've also included tests for manifests whenever we build the components, which have also helped us to at least ensure that the structure is there and catch a lot of bugs early on. And another very interesting part is we had some very baby steps with regards to internationalization of our web applications. We've seen some of the users express interest in having other languages, although we will definitely don't have something ready now, although we want to raise users' awareness that we're having discussions about how to do it. And it's a kind of complicated matter because it's not just the web apps, but also the Kubernetes concepts that are on the background. So it's difficult to find a line on how to make the internationalization between the web apps and what's actually being implemented from the Kubernetes side. But we'd like to ask users to also express their interest if they like to see this effort going forward, since we're mainly and actively discussing how to implement the architecture for internationalization. And next, regarding the web apps, we had a very good step in this release where we upgraded our frameworks from Angular 8 to Angular 12, which will allow us to fix some of the security issues of the previous version, as well as allow us to move forward and utilize the latest and up-to-date code. So to the next slide, we're going to see what we did also regarding to notebooks specifically. And regarding the notebooks and the workflows around notebooks, first of all, we added support for launching notebooks even when users have auto-scaling GPU node groups. So in previous releases, our web app would not allow you to create a notebook unless you had the GPU attached to at least one node. But we hadn't really thought of advanced use cases where the users will have node groups for GPUs that will scale up only when a pod is requesting such GPUs. So in 1.4, we've lifted this limitation. We've also improved how we handle the limits and CPU limits and requests on the web apps. There were some issues on how they were being calculated, but we've ironed all of the details out for this release. And last but not least, we've slightly made our pod default a little bit more generic, since previously it had some issues. It only worked with notebooks, but sometimes it would not work with deployments and pods created from deployments. So this is also fixed in 1.4. And next. So this is the update for the notebook working group. Let me also do an update on the manifest working group and what we've been working on this release. So the first thing that we've tried to do from the terms of manifest is we've moved all of the third-party code out of the manifest repo. So now most of the distributions will have their own manifest outside of this main repository, and we've narrowed down the focus only to keeping up to date the different components of the Kubeflow ecosystem into a central repository. So, and also here I'm going to do a quick reminder on the pattern that we do for manifest, which is we really want to follow a GitOps pattern where the manifest working group is going to provide people with Git tags and upstream manifest and overlays, where users can just edit these overlays, commit them, and apply them to manage their Kubeflow cluster. And last but not least, we've also kept the manifest provided by this working group up to date with the latest developments of the components. So one main example of this is that by upgrading KFServing, we've also updated Knative. And Knative had some issues working with DEX and not service, which are two components for doing authentication for basic clusters that don't have their own authentication solution. So we've provided some overlays for users to also have Knative work with DEX and auth service. And this is the update we had for the manifest working group. And with this, I'll now pass the torch on Anna, who will give you an update on distributions and our guides.
Thanks, Kimonas. So Kubeflow community is supported by many organizations that produce Kubeflow distributions. And as listed on the slide, there are 11 distributions available. And in the Kubeflow site, you'll be able to see which versions each distribution currently supports, as well as links to their docs associated with the supported version. So using this link, when you navigate to it, you'll be able to find which distribution supports the latest 1.4 release. And also in 1.4, the release team actually took the effort to identify the owners and communicated with them during the distribution testing phase. And we were able to get many distributions on board with the 1.4 and was able to catch issues based on their feedback. So we really appreciate all the communication updates from the owners, and we hope to continue this in the future so that we can provide the community with up-to-date information about each distribution with every release. Next, we have tutorials. So in this release, there are 3 new tutorials available for everyone. The first one is AutoML tutorial. And this one will help you understand what AutoML is and give you a hands-on experience on creating metadata-based workflows. It also actually provides like end-to-end flow, starting with how to set up Kubeflow, and also goes through how to serve it, and also show how to leverage the TensorBoard feature as well. Then there's also the Kubeflow pipeline tutorial that's available. This one uses the Kubeflow pipeline SDK version 2 to orchestrate the machine learning workflow in the version 2 compatible mode. By trying out this tutorial, you'll be able to get hands-on experience with version 2 compatible pipeline features. Then lastly, there's Katib tutorial available. This goes through how to run Katib experiment on your local machine using time clusters. It leverages kubectl commands to learn Katib experiments, and you'll learn how to look through like trials, suggestions, and how to get the best hyperparameters using all through command line. So whether you're new or been around in Kubeflow community, I hope you check these out to get yourself familiar with new features. Next, we have a few things, important things that's coming up. So with the 1.4 being 1.4 release wrapping up, we will now enter into the planning phase for the 1.5 release. And during this time, we will have a retrospective for 1.4, and new 1.5 release team will be formed, and 1.5 release schedule will be planned and shared with the community. As for the working groups, they will start planning which features they like to include for the working group. And if you like more details on what happens in the planning phase, I recommend checking out the release role handbook. Then we also have the Kubeflow compliance program proposal that's coming up. This was actually introduced a few months ago during one of the community meetings, and currently in the process of gathering feedback from the community. The goal of the compliance program is to ensure that the usage of Kubeflow trademark meets certain like standard specification. And the proposal goes through explaining the requirements for like Kubeflow distributions and application to become certified under the program. So as you might be affected by this program, please remember to check out the proposal. And if you haven't already, please leave your feedback on the open PR. Now I will pass it to Josh.
Thanks, Anna. And I like to just kind of sum up this release in, there are things that we look at final notes, and I continue to watch through the user survey and user input about the adoption of Kubeflow, especially as a platform. And one of the things that I did want to kind of just point out from this user survey is that you can look and see the components that are being used, and you can obviously see pipelines 85%, notebooks 73%. So these two really at a high level of use. But then if you look at hyperparameter tuning, Katib, as well as KFServing and potentially even TensorBoard, 42% or more are saying that they're using those 5 components, right? And if you even dig down a little bit further, you'll see training operator as well as TF-serving are another. So you could make a case here that a third of users are potentially using 7 or 8 different components or plan to. So I see that as kind of this direction that the original vision is that you could use Kubeflow as a single component, and we've shown how we've simplified the implementation for a single component. But I also like to point out that there is a platform view and that people can grow with Kubeflow because there's multiple offerings here that will help your life cycle from end to end. And I'd like to make an appeal, especially to the Kubeflow users. I know that there are thousands or even tens of thousands that are out there. We've seen that in some of the testing that's been done on the tools that have come in, whether it's MicroK8s or whether it's Mini KF. And what I'd like to do is just ask the users to particularly think about joining the Slack channel, participating in the Kubeflow Discuss mailing list, attend the working group meetings as well as the community meetings, and watch the GitHub. We definitely appreciate all the input that we've got from the community. And I would just like to say a big thank you to all the working group leads, as well as everyone who did the hard work to contribute and deliver Kubeflow 1.4. It's a really great release, and we look forward to getting your input and knowing about your success.